Have you ever felt trapped in a never-ending cycle with no way out? Like you are stuck in a game where the rules were written by a narcissist, someone who always thinks they're the center of the universe, the brightest star in a sky they painted themselves? If you've ever been in that place, manipulated, made to doubt yourself, drained of your energy just to feed their ego, then you're exactly where you need to be today. I'm going to show you not just how to escape that trap, but how to make them face their deepest fear, losing control over you. This isn't about petty revenge or the kind of drama you see on TV. This is about reclaiming your power, step by step, in ways they never saw coming. Picture this: the narcissist in your life. It could be a boss who constantly demands admiration, a former friend who thrives on attention, or a family member who always made you feel like you were never enough. They're not as strong as they pretend to be. They survive on your attention. Just like an actor needs an audience to feel real, they need your applause, your anger, your reactions to keep their show going. But what happens when you turn off the spotlight? When you take away the one thing they crave most, your recognition, your presence in their world, they don't just feel lost, they begin to crumble. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Flip the script so you don't just walk away. You rise higher, stronger and freer than ever before. We're going to go through 7 practical strategies, not cheap tricks or empty promises, but real, proven techniques rooted in deep psychology and real-life stories from people just like you and me, people who once got caught in the whirlwind of manipulation. From the icy silence that cuts sharper than a knife to setting boundaries like unbreakable steel wall. From speaking hard truths they can't escape to taking bold action that proves their power is gone. From becoming emotionally indifferent, erasing their meaning in your life, to reclaiming every ounce of strength they once stole from you. And finally, living in your full truth, you'll see just how powerless they become when they lose the thing they need most: you. This isn't just about making them pay, it's about finding yourself again. It's about walking out of the darkness they pulled you into and stepping fully into your light. So I want you to picture this. You are not a victim in this story. You are not the weak one they wanted you to believe you were. You hold the key to unlocking your freedom and locking the door they used to manipulate you. Today, we're going to open that door together. Are you ready to begin? Let's dive in, because this isn't just a video. This is a revolution in your life. Before we dive into the specific strategies, you need to truly understand who you're dealing with. Because to beat a narcissist, you have to see through them. A narcissist isn't the confident, untouchable person they pretend to be. They're not standing tall on a foundation of true self-worth or inner strength. The reality is quite the opposite. Beneath that arrogant facade, beneath the bragging and superiority complex, is a fragile ego, thin and delicate like glass. They don't thrive on their own strength. They survive through you. You are the mirror they need to feel like they exist, to feel important. Without you, without your attention, they are nothing. Think about the narcissists you've encountered in your life. Maybe it was a co-worker, the one who constantly bragged about their accomplishments in every meeting, but the moment no one applauded or praised them, they'd lash out or start blaming others. Or maybe it was an old friend, someone who texted you non-stop about their problems, but the second you didn't respond quickly enough, accused you of being cold or uncaring. Perhaps it was a family member, someone who always made you feel like you could never do anything right, never be good enough just so they could feel superior. That's who they really are. Narcissists aren't strong, they're insecure, and their ego is like a paper castle, decorated with grand words and inflated pride, but all it takes is one small gust of wind, or more precisely your indifference, for the whole thing to come crashing down. In psychology, what they depend on is called narcissistic supply. That's the attention, admiration, fear, even anger they drain from you and everyone around them. And it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative emotion, they just need you to react. Why? Because every time you react, you confirm their power. You show them they are still the center of your world. When you praise them, they feel superior. When you get angry, they still win. Because you're giving them your energy. But what happens when you stop reacting? When you cut off that supply? They panic. They don't know what to do. Because deep down, beneath all that arrogance, is nothing but a vast emptiness, a void they've been running from their entire lives. Picture this: a narcissist is like an actor on a stage. They need an audience for their performance to mean something. If the audience gets up and walks away, the entire play collapses. You are that audience, and when you no longer sit there, clapping or booing, they have no idea how to go on. That is their greatest weakness. They can't stand on their own. They need you to feel real. And once you understand that, you'll see you're not the weaker one in this game. You're the one holding the power. You can turn off the spotlight. You can walk out of the theater. You can leave them to face the truth they've spent a lifetime avoiding. Understanding this weakness is the first step toward winning. Not by shouting, not by fighting head-on, but by taking away the one thing they need most: your attention, your presence in their world. When you do that, you'll see them for what they really are, not unstoppable forces, but desperate individuals clinging to you just to survive. Now that you've seen through them, let's dive into the first way to make them pay, not through anger, but through the power that's always been yours. Strategy 1. Absolute silence. Let's begin with a method that may seem simple on the surface, but strikes with the force of an invisible blade: absolute silence. Many people mistakenly think that silence is a sign of weakness or passivity, but no, in this context, silence is an art form. It's a weapon, sharp, powerful, and deeply rooted in self-control. It's a statement without words, yet it can shake the entire inner world of a narcissist to its core. Because for a narcissist, your attention isn't just something they want, it's something they depend on. Like an addict needing their daily fix, they feed off your gaze, your reactions, your emotions. That's how they sustain their fragile, hollow sense of self. So when you choose not to react, no responses, no raised eyebrows, no sighs or shifting glances, you're cutting off the only supply line they have to keep their performance going. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain. You don't need to defend yourself. Your silence is the locked door that shuts off all their chances to manipulate or control you. From a psychological perspective, this is a direct strike at their so-called narcissistic supply, a term used by psychologists like Otto Kernberg and Heinz Kohut to describe the narcissist's constant need for admiration, attention, or even conflict to feel significant. When you refuse to feed that emotional supply, you don't just confuse them, you trigger something deeper, something known as a narcissistic injury. That's the moment they're forced to confront the void inside themselves, the one they've always tried to mask with drama, control, and fake confidence. And often they'll react aggressively, with anger, blame, pleading, or false promises to change. But don't be fooled. That's not genuine remorse. It's the desperate cry of someone losing control. Picture this through the story of Sarah, an office worker in Ohio. She used to be close friends with Emily, a person who turned every relationship into a stage to get attention. Emily would text constantly about her boyfriend, her work drama, her endless emotional spirals. Every time Sarah responded, she got dragged deeper into the chaos. But the moment Sarah didn't reply quickly, Emily lashed out. "You're so cold. You never care about me." Sarah used to try harder, hoping kindness would calm Emily down. But her efforts only drained her more and pulled her further into the toxicity. Then one day Sarah made a decision to set boundaries for herself. She didn't fight, argue, or explain. She just chose silence. No replies, no reactions, no engagement. Emily escalated from rage, "Who do you think you are ignoring me like this?" to desperate pleading, "I'm sorry, I just needed someone to listen." But Sarah didn't budge. She remained calm, like a quiet wall standing strong against a crashing wave. And eventually Emily disappeared from her life, not because of a dramatic confrontation, but because silence stripped away the stage, and the narcissist had nowhere left to perform. That's the power of this strategy. It doesn't drain your energy. You don't have to over-explain or prove your worth. You simply step out of the play they've written, leaving behind an empty stage where the narcissist is left to monologue into the emptiness they once forced others to fill. And while they're spiraling from the loss of your attention, you're reclaiming your peace, your clarity, and your self-respect. This isn't just a way to break free from toxic influence. It's a profound healing journey, one where you take back control of your emotions, your boundaries, and your life. So the next time a narcissist, whether it's a manipulative coworker or a drama-fueled family member, tries to provoke you, don't give them what they crave most, your reaction. Don't rush to reply to dramatic texts. Don't show hurt when they throw insults. Maintain your calm. Hold your steady gaze. Keep doing your work as if they no longer exist in your inner world. And when you do that, you won't just trigger their fear of abandonment. You'll be sending a powerful message. Your peace is no longer something they can touch. Strategy 2. Set firm boundaries. After you've embraced the power of silence, it's time to take an even stronger step. Setting firm, non-negotiable boundaries. This isn't a gentle reminder or a polite suggestion. This is a bold declaration of self-worth, a clear line that no one crosses without consequences. Don't confuse kindness with being a pushover. A real boundary is not a plea for respect. It's an action that protects the respect you have for yourself. It doesn't need approval. It just needs enforcement. Narcissists constantly try to control your emotions, your time, and your energy as if they were theirs to own. They manipulate through guilt, lure you in emotionally, and push your limits with subtle tactics. But when you build a wall of steel boundaries, you shatter the illusion of control they've relied on. You take back your mental and emotional sovereignty. Let's look at the real-life story of Mike, a software engineer living in suburban Texas. Since childhood, Mike lived under the shadow of a narcissistic mother, a woman who tried to dominate his life through criticism and control. From his career, "You should have been a doctor, coding has no future," to his parenting, "You don't know how to raise your kids properly," even his personal space, "Your house is a mess, it's disgusting." For years, Mike tolerated it. He tried to explain, tried to change, hoping that if he worked hard enough, she'd finally understand and stop criticizing. But the truth was, she didn't want to understand. She wanted control, and his compliance only fed her power, until one day, Mike woke up. He realized he could no longer trade his peace for fake approval. He said one simple but firm sentence, "Mum, I will not accept any more criticism. If it continues, I will leave." His mother laughed, thinking it was just a bluff, and she criticized him again. But this time Mike didn't argue. He stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked out. No yelling, no guilt, no angry stares. When she screamed after him, calling him an ungrateful son, he didn't look back. Later, she tried again. But Mike did the same thing. He left, calmly and consistently. No reaction, no bargaining. It wasn't a threat anymore, it was a reality. And over time, she was forced to change. Not out of love, but because his boundaries had become a wall she couldn't break through. From a psychological perspective, this strategy directly attacks the narcissist's belief in omnipotent control, a mechanism they use to see others as mere extensions of themselves. When you set boundaries, you smash the mirror they use to reflect their own inflated image, and instead force them to see the truth. They're not as powerful as they think. Of course, their first reaction will be narcissistic rage. Anger, blame, desperate pleas, or fake promises to change, just to lure you back into their control. But remember, the strongest pushback often comes when their grip is slipping. That's not a sign of strength. It's a sign of desperation. The true power of firm boundaries doesn't lie in what you say, it lies in the consistency of your actions. Every time you stand your ground, you don't just take away their leverage, you also reinforce your own self-respect, reminding yourself that you deserve peace, freedom, and dignity. So, if you're dealing with a narcissist, whether it's a controlling partner, a boundary-crossing co-worker, or a manipulative family member, Have the courage to set boundaries. Start with clear, direct statements like, "I don't accept being spoken to that way. I won't participate if this goes against my values." Then follow through. Leave the room, end the conversation, cut ties if necessary. They will test you, but the more consistent you are, the more powerless they become. And more importantly, you teach yourself that you are worthy of respect, not because someone else gives it, but because you choose it for yourself. Setting firm boundaries isn't just about taking control of the situation, it's about stepping into a stronger, freer, more independent version of yourself. A version that no longer lives to please others, but lives in alignment with your own truth. Strategy 3. Speak the truth directly. Next, we move into a strategy that requires courage, but delivers incredible results: speaking the truth directly. This isn't about starting conflict or getting into shouting matches. It's not about proving who's right or wrong. This is the action of an emotionally mature person, someone who refuses to keep living in a distorted reality shaped by someone else. Narcissists aren't just masters of manipulation, they are experts at twisting reality to make you doubt yourself. They build an entire performance, a fabricated world where you're always the one at fault. You're too sensitive, imagining things or overreacting. And the moment you step into that stage, you don't just lose clarity, you slowly begin to lose trust in your own perception. But truth has a strange kind of power. It doesn't need to scream to be heard. It doesn't need to argue to be validated. It just needs to be spoken, and the masks begin to fall on their own. From a psychological perspective, this strategy strikes right at one of the narcissist's most common tactics: gaslighting. A form of psychological manipulation described by Dr. Robin Stern as a method that causes you to question your memory, your feelings, and your reality. Phrases like, "That never happened," "You're imagining things," or "You're too sensitive," are silent daggers that chip away at your sense of truth. And do you know what disarms that weapon? A calm, simple, unshakable statement: "I know what happened." No raised voice, no anger, just the quiet certainty of someone grounded in reality. Take the story of Jen, a graphic designer living in New York. She once dated a man who showed strong narcissistic traits: charming, magnetic, and deeply manipulative. After they broke up, he kept bothering her, blaming her for everything. "You ruined everything. You're too difficult. You don't know how to love." Then came the gaslighting, denying his lies and even the cheating that had clearly occurred. "You're making it all up. That never happened," he said. And Jen started to doubt herself, spiraling into confusion, arguments, emotional exhaustion, desperately trying to prove the truth. Until one day, something shifted in her. She stopped needing to prove the truth, she just needed to stand in it. During a video call, as he once again tried to rewrite history, Jen responded clearly, slowly, without a trace of fear: "I know you cheated. I have proof. I have messages. I have dates. I don't need you to admit it, and I'm no longer questioning myself." No yelling, no pleading, no tears, just truth, solid and undeniable. He stumbled, tried to deflect, called her dramatic, but Jen didn't engage. She ended the call, blocked his number, and stepped out of the toxic performance for good. Her truth was the final cut that severed the last remaining strings. And that's what you need to remember. Truth doesn't need to be accepted, it only needs to be spoken. When you speak the truth, you don't just make the narcissist squirm. You begin the healing process within yourself. You reclaim the inner strength they tried to take from you. So if someone, whether a partner, a colleague, or a family member, is trying to distort reality, don't argue on their terms. Don't let them pull you into emotional chaos. Speak your truth with calm, clarity, and conviction. "I know what happened, and I don't need to prove it to anyone. I'm not confused, I just refuse to be manipulated any longer." And then stop. Don't continue, don't explain. Let the truth do its work, because it will. Truth always has a stronger voice than lies. More importantly, you're sending a message to your own soul. I trust myself. And that's exactly what a narcissist never wants you to have: inner trust. But when you hold your truth like a solid sword in your hands, You don't just escape manipulation, you evolve into a new version of yourself, stronger, clearer, and unshakably whole. Strategy 4. Take real action. It's time to do more than just say you deserve better. It's time to walk like you know it's true. If silence is the shield that protects your soul, real action is the sword that ends the cycle of manipulation. Enough with empty words, repeated warnings, and second chances. A narcissist isn't afraid of what you say. They only start to feel powerless when you act without warning, without permission, and without looking back. They live in a world of words, empty promises, blame games, and grand declarations used as tools of control. But the moment you move from talk to action, you don't just disrupt their script, you collapse the entire stage, because you've just stepped out of the role they cast you in. Take the story of Tom, a computer technician living in Oregon. He shared an apartment with Dave, a roommate who displayed classic narcissistic behavior. Dave constantly belittled and insulted Tom to feel superior. "You're useless, you're lucky to have me, you should be grateful I put up with you." At first, Tom reacted the way most people would. He tried to reason, argue, even tried to cooperate to keep the peace. But the more he engaged, the more exhausted he became. Every reaction only fueled Dave's manipulation. Then one day, Tom stopped arguing. He simply said, "If this happens again, I'm leaving." Of course, Dave laughed it off, assuming it was an empty threat. Narcissists always bet on the idea that you won't actually act, and they're usually right, until they meet someone who's finally awakened. A few days later, when the insults came again, Tom didn't say a word. He calmly packed his things, grabbed his suitcase, and walked out. No final confrontation, no dramatic farewell, just a clear, decisive action. And in that moment, he severed the last string Dave had used to hold control. Dave panicked. He sent non-stop texts, begged for forgiveness, promised to change. But Tom didn't return. Because he didn't need an apology, he had reclaimed his freedom. That's the power of real action. From a psychological standpoint, this cuts directly into what's called projection, a defense mechanism narcissists use to dump their own insecurities onto others. They want you to respond like a weak, reactive person so they can keep seeing themselves as strong. But when you rise and walk away, you leave their illusion behind, and they're forced to face the emptiness they've been running from. Real action also exposes another deep weakness, narcissistic helplessness. It's the moment they realize they no longer control your emotions, your choices, or your path. They may rage, plead, or pretend to repent, but it's all just fear wearing a mask, the fear of losing the power they once held. So if someone is crossing your boundaries, whether it's a partner, a family member, or a colleague, don't say you'll leave. Actually leave. Don't say you won't tolerate it anymore. Start living like someone who's already free. Action doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes the quietest exit is the loudest declaration of your worth. And when you take real action, not for recognition, not for them to admit their wrongs, not for a thank you, you're rewriting the story of your life. A story where you are the main character, where you define your own value, no longer playing a role in someone else's script. Because ultimately, this isn't just about walking away from a narcissist, it's about finally coming home to yourself. Strategy 5. Complete detachment. Once you've learned how to stay silent, set firm boundaries, speak your truth, and take decisive action, it's time to elevate to a higher level, complete detachment. This isn't just prolonged silence or physical withdrawal. This is a deep emotional release, a state where the narcissist no longer holds any space in your inner world. A narcissist doesn't just crave your attention. They need you to stay emotionally invested in them. They need your reactions, your hopes, your energy to feel validated and alive. But when you become indifferent, when you no longer expect, react, or hold on, you extinguish the only flame that fuels their sense of importance. And when that happens, they don't just lose control, they begin to face their greatest fear, being invisible in your world. Consider the story of Lisa, an elementary school teacher in California. She spent years in a painful marriage with a narcissistic husband, a man who made her feel small, inadequate, and undeserving. He belittled her work. "You have no real talent." He undermined her role in the family. "You're a terrible wife." Even her laughter became a weapon he used to hurt her. Lisa used to try, hoping that if she were better, if she sacrificed more, he would finally change. But slowly she realized he didn't want her to grow. He wanted her to feel permanently inferior so she'd be easier to control. And then one day, Lisa let go. Not through a screaming match, not through dramatic declarations. She chose emotional detachment as her quiet liberation. She stopped seeking praise from him. She stopped reacting to his insults. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She didn't flinch. Instead, she turned inward. She started painting, joined a yoga class, read books, and opened herself to a world that existed without him at the center. And then something strange happened. He began to panic. No longer the one in control, he became the one begging. "I'll change. Don't leave me. I need you." But Lisa wasn't there anymore, not because she had physically left, but because she had detached so deeply that he no longer held any power in her mind. She didn't need to say goodbye, because in her soul, the goodbye had happened long ago. From a psychological standpoint, this strategy delivers a direct blow to what Heinz Kohut described as narcissistic dependency, the narcissist's emotional reliance on others to feel worthy and real. When the person they depend on, you, no longer cares, they spiral into narcissistic collapse, an inner breakdown where they are forced to confront the emotional emptiness they've been avoiding their whole lives. They might scream, beg, threaten, but it doesn't matter anymore, because your emotional door is already shut. From the inside, the true power of detachment doesn't lie in any dramatic action. It lies in the energy you no longer give away. You don't need to punish them. You don't need to change them. You don't even need to explain. You simply walk away from the emotional game they've tried to pull you into and walk toward your own path. So if someone, a toxic ex, a manipulative relative, or a drama-fueled coworker is trying to pull you into their chaos, don't just be silent. Be indifferent. Don't react. Don't overthink. Don't let them occupy a single moment in your mind. Live for yourself. Do what brings you joy, freedom, and brightness day by day. When you do, you don't just leave them powerless, you rebirth yourself into someone they can no longer manipulate, control, or dim. Because true indifference is not coldness. It's the highest form of emotional maturity. It's the moment you no longer need to fight for respect, because you know you already deserve it, whether they see it or not. Strategy 6. Reclaim your power. After everything you've learned, knowing when to be silent, setting firm boundaries, speaking the truth, taking decisive action, and emotionally detaching, it's time to come back home to yourself. Now is the moment to reclaim your power, the power they once tried to crush, manipulate, and steal from you. This is no longer about defense. This is your rise, a turning point from within, where you're not just free from the narcissist's grip, but you're actively rebuilding your life with your own hands and your resilient heart. Narcissists want you to believe you're small, dependent, that you can't stand on your own without them. But every time you choose yourself, every time you walk away for your safety, your dignity, your peace, you break another link in the invisible chain they use to control you. Psychologically, this shift is known as moving from an external locus of control to an internal locus of control, a concept developed by psychologist Julian Rotter. Narcissists want you to believe your worth comes from how they see you, how they judge you. But when you begin defining your value from within, they lose all relevance in your story. And that's when they start to fall apart. Because they haven't just lost someone to control, they've lost the mirror they used to see themselves as superior. Take the story of Jake, a hard-working builder from Michigan. For years, Jake was subtly controlled by a friend named Chris, someone who seemed charismatic and confident but constantly manipulated Jake's life. Chris picked the restaurants, planned every hangout, decided what Jake should do like or even how he should live. And whenever Jake disagreed, Chris criticized and belittled him. "You have no personality. You're boring. You should be lucky to have me as a friend." Jake went along with it at first. He made compromises, gave up little things he enjoyed just to keep the peace. But then he looked at himself and realized that every time he gave in, he lost a little piece of who he was. He wasn't Jake anymore. He was just a version Chris had crafted. Until one day Jake started his journey back to himself. He said no for the first time. No to places he didn't like, no to activities that disconnected him from his own soul. He started fishing again, playing basketball, spending time with people who genuinely respected him. And of course, Chris wasn't happy. He reacted with threats, guilt trips, emotional manipulation. "You're a terrible friend, you'll regret this." But Jake had changed. He no longer needed Chris to feel worthy. His inner strength had awakened, and nothing could dim it anymore. And that's the message for you. When you say no to manipulation, you say yes to dignity. When you prioritize your peace, you begin rebuilding the foundation of your life. When you stop living for someone else's judgment, you start living for your soul. Narcissists may still exist, they may still try to control, still act out their old scripts, but you're not on that stage anymore. You're the one writing your own script now, and they're no longer the main character. From now on, choose every piece of your life with intention. Your time is sacred. Don't waste it on those who don't value it. Your voice is power. Use it to speak your truth, not to please others. Your heart deserves nourishment, not destruction. When you reclaim your power, you don't just leave a narcissist powerless. You restore your dignity, your self-trust, and the light they once tried to extinguish. And once that light shines again, no one can touch it, because it's lit from within you. Strategy 7. Live in alignment with your true self. And finally, the most powerful way to make a narcissist completely lose their grip on you isn't confrontation. It's fully returning to your authentic self. No longer playing a supporting role in their script, no longer living to please anyone else, but living as you. A quiet yet powerful declaration that you no longer belong to their world. Narcissists want you to believe they're the center of your universe, that you need their validation to feel worthy, to feel whole. They manipulate through guilt, comparisons, and empty promises. But when you begin living according to your own values, dreams, and inner calling, every one of their control tactics loses its power. When you live in alignment with who you truly are, you don't just escape their influence. You prove something they never want to accept. You can be happy, free, and fulfilled without them. Take the story of Anna, a bank employee in Florida, someone who spent most of her youth trying to please a narcissistic mother. Her mother didn't just interfere in her decisions, from choosing a major, friendships, to even how she dressed, but also convinced Anna that she was never good enough unless she met her mother's expectations. "You'll never get anywhere with music. Your friends aren't good enough. You should be more like me." Anna believed it. She gave up her beloved guitar, distanced herself from friends who brought her joy, and lived like a shadow, desperate for her mother's approval. But the truth is, that approval never came, because it was never rooted in love, only in control. Until one day, Anna stopped chasing it, not with loud declarations, but with a calm, powerful choice. She bought back the guitar she once sold. She signed up for music classes. She began writing songs, reconnecting with old friends, and building a new life. A life that was finally her own. Naturally, her mother reacted, criticizing, belittling, then begging. But Anna wasn't living in that world anymore. She had escaped the spiral and was flying toward the light of her true life. From a psychological perspective, this is the breaking of narcissistic enmeshment, the false identity fusion that narcissists create to make you feel like you're just an extension of them, as described by psychoanalyst Alice Miller. When you live authentically, you detach from that dependency, and they are forced to face their deepest fear, abandonment, not physical but emotional irrelevance. When you rise and live true to your values, your dreams, your passions, and your essence, you don't just reclaim inner freedom, you deliver a blow to their greatest illusion, that you cannot exist without them. And the beauty of this strategy lies in its quiet strength. You don't need to declare it. You don't need to fight. You just need to live. And that freedom, that joy, that peace you create from within becomes unbearable for the narcissist because they can no longer touch a life they no longer control. So if someone, an old partner, a controlling relative, or anyone who once made you feel small is still trying to define who you are, rise silently and live the life you were born to live. Pick up the passion you once put aside. Choose the path that lights up your soul. Build relationships where you're loved for your true self. Because when you live in alignment with who you are, you don't just render them powerless, you declare that you alone hold the right to define your life. And that is the ultimate form of freedom, maturity, and spiritual rebirth. You're not just escaping a narcissist, you're becoming someone no one can manipulate, no one can replicate, a version of you that is real, radiant, and unshakably powerful. We have walked through a journey not only to render the narcissist powerless, but for you to rediscover yourself, to step out of the darkness they once pulled you into. We have explored 7 powerful strategies. Absolute silence cuts off their lifeline, turning them into air they cannot bear. Firm boundaries break the illusion of control, reminding them you don't belong to them. Speaking the truth pierces through the fog of manipulation, exposing the weakness they try to hide. Real action proves their words no longer have power, that you are the one who defines your life. Complete indifference erases their meaning in your world, forcing them to face their greatest fear, not being needed. Reclaiming your power helps you stand tall like a mountain, unshakable by anyone, and living as your true self, the final and most powerful way, proves you don't need them to be happy, that you are the center of your own life. Now you hold the power in your hands, the power to change, to walk away, to live the life you deserve.